I had longed for and finally was blessed with my adorable child. At the gathering to celebrate the birth, my husband said, "If only you weren't here." I thought this was the true beginning of our married life, but my husband's unexpected words and cold attitude made me very sad. And my husband had an outrageous plan. Well then, I will stop it. My husband and mother-in-law. Learn the meaning of the phrase mother's strength through my own experience. My name is Maria. I'm a working housewife in my 30s. I've been married to my husband, Sam, for 7 years, and our current worry is not being able to have a child. We go to the hospital, and Sam has been tested, and it has been found that we have unexplained infertility. In other words, life is truly a gift. It is hard enough to go through treatment when there is a reason, but it is even harder when there is no reason and nothing can be done. We try to have marital relations at the timing specified by the hospital, but after a few years of no results, it feels like a duty. I felt our relationship with him getting colder and colder. This kind of thing tends to be more upsetting for the husband than the wife. So I tried to act cheerful and not show my desperation, but it seemed to have no effect on him. He began to sigh more and more when I told him the timing from the hospital. When he acted like that, it made me unhappy too, so we ended up not trying at the right times. Naturally, we didn't have a child, and our relationship got even colder. At first, he expressed his feelings with sighs, but recently he started saying it out loud. What's the point of trying at the right time? Marital relations are meaningless. I'm tired from work. I can't just conveniently adjust to the timing. Men are sensitive. He would say such unpleasant things. Even though I know that children are a gift, I couldn't imagine a child coming to such a cold marriage. Eventually, I started to give up too. But Sam's snide remarks were not the end of it. Still no children? It's Maria's fault, isn't it? The one shouting such words angrily was my mother-in-law, Lisa. A daughter-in-law who can't even have one child is useless. It was my father-in-law, Tony, sighing with a face that looked like an aged Sam. Every time we met, "Children?" Sam's parents would ask me. Even though we had told them it was unexplained infertility, they would always blame me whenever we met. Sam's parents married late and had Sam in their late 30s. So they are in their 70s now, but still have old-fashioned thinking. Blaming only me for the infertility is outdated, and blaming me when we don't know the cause is ridiculous. But his parents are mysteriously confident that they are not wrong. Maria, don't you have any charm as a woman? What? What? Suddenly, she continued to the dumbfounded me. You don't know the cause? It's obvious. It's because you don't have any charm. If you were an attractive woman that could make Sam feel like it, you'd have children in no time. What? I don't understand. It's the first time I've heard that attractive women get pregnant easily. But Lisa just wanted to make the infertility all my fault. You're getting careless in your 30s. Doesn't Maria's belly look like early pregnancy? That's not true. I was shocked to hear her bluntly say something I was sensitive about. She could say such insensitive things without hesitation. Then, how about you, Lisa? I was so angry that I blurted out. When you gave birth to Sam, you were in your 30s too, weren't you? You must have been very charming. It was a complete sarcasm. Because when we got married, I was shown pictures of Lisa and knew what she looked like when she was younger. Lisa has always been plump, even before giving birth and during her single days. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with being plump, but if she criticizes my body shape, it's only fair to point out her past figure. Yet Lisa, Tani was crazy about my body, casually says. And she says it with a strange sense of pride. Some people do prefer plump women, so I looked at Tawny, but he seemed to have a complicated expression. No, that's not true. Tawny seemed to say, but maybe it was just my imagination. Lisa, oblivious to this. Tawny said he absolutely wanted to marry me. He even said he'd end his life if he couldn't. He was really obsessed with me. Continued. Next to her. You threatened me, didn't you? He muttered softly. Lisa, having completely twisted the memory, kept lecturing me about what makes a woman attractive. Every time we met, she'd tell me what I should be doing to have children, which gave me a headache. Since Sam's parents' house is only 2 bus stops away, Lisa comes over frequently. The other day, she suddenly brought over a huge amount of tea leaves, saying, "This tea is perfect for fertility." I chuckled and said, "I like tea, but isn't this too much variety?" But she opened all the packages in front of me and started mixing all the tea leaves together. Surprised. If you drink it all, the effect will be multiplied, even doubled. I watched as she said, "Each type of tea might taste good on its own, but what happens when you mix them all together? It would definitely taste awful." "How is it?" "Delicious, right?" Lisa said with a beaming smile, holding her special blend of tea. Without drinking any herself, she forced it on me. I took a hesitant sip, and it tasted so bad I almost saw the other side. In the end, she didn't drink any and went home. One day, after continuous confrontations with both Sam and his parents, Sam came home late. I thought it was rare for him to have overtime, but he came home drunk, so it must have been a drinking party. As I worried about how to get the drunken Sam to the bedroom, he muttered in a daze, "Oh, I want to get married." "Huh? We are married, aren't we?" "What do you mean you want to get married?" They say a drunk person's mumbling reveals their true feelings. Could this be his subconscious desire? As I brought my ear closer to Sam's mouth, I heard it clearly. "I don't need an old hag anymore. I want to marry a young, rich beauty." I see. That's the kind of man who ranks at the lowest of the low. The one who thinks a wife should always be young, the absolute worst. Women become more attractive as they age. But, being told by Lisa that I lack charm, I can't exactly say that. Even so, I wanted to tell him. Even if you marry a young woman, she'll get older too. Does he think a woman can stay young forever? But that's not the only thing that bothers me. What does he mean by a rich woman? We're not exactly struggling for money. In fact, we have plenty of financial security. Although fertility treatments are expensive, we're not doing in vitro fertilization or anything like that, just the cheapest timing method. Neither Sam nor I have expensive hobbies, and we don't go out every weekend. We used to travel a lot when we were newlyweds, but we haven't gone anywhere in years. With both of us working and not spending frivolously, we have financial stability. So what is this about a rich woman? Does he want a more luxurious lifestyle? Even so, he should have consulted me first, and wanting to marry a younger woman is absurd. I can't accept Sam's wish, but there's no point in telling a drunk man that. I was frustrated but held it in for the day. One day, while I was still pondering over Sam's true intentions, I found out that I was pregnant. What? No way. I wasn't crying with joy, just standing there in shock. Marital relations had dwindled, and I had even stopped going to the hospital, so this was unexpected. I thought my period was late, so I took a test, and sure enough, there had been a time when we had relations. But to think I got pregnant from that one time after such a long gap. Life is mysterious, I thought once again. I was at a loss for words, not knowing how to express myself, but gradually, joy welled up inside me. I did it. Tears welled up as I spoke those words. I hurried to tell Sam. But lately, he had been coming home late more often. When he heard the news directly, "What?" his first word was, "So, I'm pregnant." I thought he would be overjoyed, but Sam's attitude was very cold. "So what?" "What do you mean, so what? We finally did it." "Yeah, well, it feels a bit late now." With that, he left the room. I was stunned. What the hell? This is a life we longed for. Our child that we had been waiting for. Aren't you happy? The shock quickly extinguished my joy. When I told my parents, they were overjoyed. But Sam's parents were different. What? Pregnant? Now? They said something similar to Sam. They had been nagging about grandchildren for so long, so what's this? I felt sad and angry at the same time. Moreover, don't rely on us even after the baby is born. We won't take care of the baby just because it's our grandchild. They were incredibly cold. What's with this sudden change? It occurred to me that Sam and his parents had been cold lately. Sam was coming home late, claiming he was working overtime but often coming back drunk. And on weekends, he would always go out alone. Even when I invited him to go out together sometimes. "I don't want to go out with an old woman like you." He would say terrible things. I didn't want to push myself too hard in the early stages of pregnancy. "Go shopping on your own." He coldly avoided me. Since we both worked and did the shopping on weekends, the shopping bags would get heavy. I had no choice but to use the grocery delivery service. "Don't waste money." He got mad at me. He didn't help with the house cleaning, even after I got pregnant. Rather, he seemed to make me do more than before. "It's a wife's duty to serve her husband." He would say such things without a second thought. His lack of consideration for my pregnancy made me increasingly sad. Sam's parents were just as cold. They had often visited before, but recently they would drop by even on weekdays. And they would always stay for dinner. Naturally, this increased the effort and amount of cooking. Even though more ingredients were needed, Sam still wouldn't go shopping. Even though it was heavy with all the shopping. "Carry that much. Don't slack off." He would just yell without helping at all. Sam's parents, "Make delicious food that suits our tastes," would also say. The moment we finally had a child, they all turned cold, and I was left bewildered. Even with morning sickness, they would say, "Pregnancy isn't an illness. Don't be spoiled." Sam would still say outdated things. "When I was pregnant, I moved around more." She would sneer. "It's terrible to slack off just because you're pregnant," sighed Tawny. Even in the later stages of pregnancy, their attitudes didn't change. In fact, it only got worse. Lisa called me to their house, despite my growing belly, and asked me to clean. What? I can't move well because of my big belly. You're always trying to slack off. Pregnant women need moderate exercise. She scolded me harshly as I stood there confused. Stop making excuses. I need this moved. Do it. Tawny said coldly, pointing to a large piece of furniture. It was a big shelf. I can't do it. Even when I tried to refuse. Stop making excuses. You're our daughter-in-law. Work. They always said such terrible things. Why did I have to endure this? I finally got pregnant, and this is the treatment I get? I wanted to go back to my parents' house, but it was 2 hours away by train. And my brother's family lived there too, so it was hard to return. With no one to support me, I held my big belly and cried. Everyone was so cold to me that it almost broke my heart. but I managed to hold on because of the baby in my belly. I realized that having someone to protect makes a person stronger. While enduring the days of mistreatment from Sam, my baby grew healthily inside me. Feeling the baby's movements was touching, but it also made me cry more because of he and his parents' coldness. Despite everything, I gave birth safely. Meeting my baby was more emotional than I had imagined, and I didn't care at all that Sam didn't rush to the hospital. When he and his parents met the baby after I was discharged. "Oh, she looks like Sam. She's cute." They finally smiled. I shuddered to think what their reaction would have been if she didn't look like him. Still, the sense of accomplishment from giving birth was immense. It would be tough from now on, but I decided to be grateful that we both left the hospital without any issues. However, parenting was much harder than I had anticipated. Caring for a baby with a weakened body was truly exhausting. I had to do everything alone, without any help. Sam still came home late at night and showed no interest in the baby. Meanwhile, his parents visited our house almost every day. They didn't help with childcare, just adored the baby and then, as always, demanded meals. Recently, they even started taking showers before leaving, which meant I had to clean up afterward. When I asked them to watch the baby so I could go shopping, "Are you neglecting your child?" they accused me. And if I tried to order deli delivery, "Stop being lazy," they scolded me. Unable to go back to my parents' house, my physical and mental strength was being drained. Around a month after giving birth, Sam's parents suggested, "Let's have a celebration with relatives." What? I thought, but I had no right or energy to object. Plans were quickly made, and many relatives came over during the holidays. This is a joke, right? But since they had already come, I had no choice. I was extremely busy taking care of the guests on top of childcare. Naturally, Sam and his parents did nothing. Moreover, their behavior changed in a strange way. In a word, they ignored me. "Hey Sam, how much coffee should I serve?" Even when I asked, Sam didn't look at me. "Lisa, are these sweets okay?" Lisa silently took the sweets from my hand. Tawny. Recently, my hearing's gotten bad. I can't hear anything." This is blatant ignoring. What is with this terrible attitude? The only one who says, "Do you need a hand?" as they see me working alone is a relative. I glare at Sam, thinking you should be the one helping, but he's already drunk, drinking beer since noon. Even if I want to rest, I can't. Just when I thought I could take a break from entertaining guests, the baby started crying. While a relative hesitates to help, Sam and his friends are laughing loudly, completely drunk. What is this? When I tried to clean up the beer cans that Sam and his friends had emptied, "If only you aren't here." Sam looked at me and mumbled something incomprehensible. What does that mean? He avoided my eyes and opened another can of beer. What was that? Even after I finished breastfeeding and putting the baby to sleep, Sam and the relatives were still partying. This is not a baby shower anymore, it's just a wild party. I can't deal with this, I thought, and headed to the kitchen, feeling hungry, and there were Sam and his parents. I hid instinctively. If they find me, they'll surely scold me again. I braced myself but sensed something strange. Without noticing me, the three of them were whispering together. This must be a bad plan. I decided to eavesdrop. "She's also reacting well," Sam said. "I see, she has a good income too, not bad at all," Tawny answered with a smile. "She's young, slim, and beautiful. Just like I was when I was younger," Lisa said. "No, Lisa, you were a bit fuller." What are they talking about? Then Sam seemed to smile nastily. So, Dad, you have no objections either? Yeah, young and rich is the best combination. That's right. Being young means she has more energy. She'll do more than that useless daughter-in-law. Sam's parents nodded at his words. However, if we divorce, it could be our responsibility. My heart skipped a beat at that moment. Divorce? What does that mean? After a pause, I understood the conversation. Apparently, Sam wants to divorce me and marry a younger woman. So Sam has been cheating on me. That's why he comes home late every night. Moreover, this woman is rich, and his parents are thrilled. But even if they divorce me, there's a chance they'll lose the grandchild, and the compensation could be troublesome. After some head-scratching, the three of them came to an outrageous conclusion. The scene changes to the living room. The relatives, completely drunk, are still having a blast. What did these people come for, I wondered, as Sam and his parents returned. Maria. I was startled by the sudden call. I turned around, thinking they stopped ignoring me, and Sam was holding a tray with several glasses. Maria, you must be tired. Have a drink and relax. Sam handed me a glass. As I held it without drinking, Sam distributed other glasses to the relatives, but I could feel Sam and his parents watching me. It was then. Whoa! One of the relatives spilled their tea. Immediately, everyone's attention turned that way. I confirmed that Sam and his parents were watching, and I quickly swapped my glass with Sam's. Then, I held the swapped glass as if nothing had happened. And I drank it all in one go, feeling the eyes of Sam and his parents on me. Oh, that was delicious. Thanks, Sam. The moment I said that, Sam looked surprised. Oh, he said, sensing that something unexpected had happened. Sam's parents were also stunned. I smiled. Sam, why don't you drink yours too? And said. About 3 minutes must have passed since Sam brought the tea. No, maybe even more. Silently pressuring him to drink quickly, Sam reluctantly sipped his tea with a dissatisfied look. Immediately. Whoa! He let out an inexplicable scream. What kind of scream is that? While everyone was surprised, Sam hurried to the bathroom. Then he rushed back. Hey, Maria! You swapped our tea, didn't you? I don't know anything about that. You must have made a mistake, Sam. Pretending ignorance, a relative looked puzzled. No need to get so upset over swapping glasses, right? And said. The atmosphere was the same around us. Well, I'm a germaphobe. I've never heard that before. Sam, you drank beer that someone else had sipped from without any problem. Sam's excuse was quickly shot down. Then an aunt said, The tea is delicious, so what's the problem? She peered into Sam's glass. It had the same tea as everyone else. That's strange. Can I have a sip? As the aunt was about to drink. No! Sam hurriedly stopped her. In his haste, he spilled the tea, splattering it around. Those who got some on their lips made faces and said, Huh? This is awful. Bitter. They grimaced. Bitter. What kind of tea is this? We all had regular tea, but this is something else. Well, that's... Instead of the stammering Sam, I'll explain. That's called cuting tea. Cuting tea? I explained to the stunned relatives. It's known as the world's worst, or rather, the most bitter tea. It's often used in pranks. Of course, if brewed correctly, it can be delicious, but not when it's intentionally made to be unpleasant. Why was Maria's tea cuting tea only? All the relatives' eyes focused on Sam, who prepared the tea. Well, it's a health tea. But it doesn't seem like something you'd give to Maria, who's still nursing. The aunt's sharp remark made Sam flustered. Is that so? I didn't know. You didn't know, yet you gave Maria something unfamiliar? No, it's not like that. Then what is it? The atmosphere gradually shifted. The cheerful mood turned icy. Everyone's cold stares were directed at Sam. At that moment, I took out my smartphone. Here's a recording of Sam and his parents talking quietly. Yes, it was a video of the three of them in the kitchen earlier. Sensing something suspicious, I had secretly recorded them. The engrossed trio hadn't noticed, and their conversation was clearly captured. Divorce Maria and remarry a younger, wealthier woman. But you'll lose a lot in the settlement. I don't want her to take the grandkids either. Worried, Sam's parents were met. Then make Maria initiate the divorce. With Sam's suggestion. We've done plenty before, but let's step it up with something like this cuting tea. It's notorious for being extremely bitter. If Maria drinks it regularly, it should do the trick. Oh, that's a good idea. So, after the relatives leave, the point is to do it in front of everyone, Mom. Maria threw away the tea I made for her, saying it was bad. Anyone would see her as the worst, right? A bad wife, and I'll get the kids. I see, Sam, you're smart. Sam, even though you're my son, you're quite the bad guy. No, Dad, you were making the pregnant woman work hard too. With that, the three of them laughed villainously. What is this? You three were planning to harass Maria like this? It was Tawny's brother Lien, shouting with his face bright red. No, it's not what you think, Lien. A flustered Tawny was punched by Lien. What were you thinking? Lisa also started getting scolded by the relatives. It's not what you think. This is a misunderstanding. There's no misunderstanding when it comes to harassing Maria. The two were surrounded. Seeing this, Sam decided it was best to quietly leave the room. So, you're trying to run away? Not so fast. I grabbed him by the neck. Let go! I'm not the bad one. Then who is? Well, maybe the old you, Maria. Don't talk nonsense. Want some more of that tea? Please, anything but that. Anything but that? What do you mean, anything but that? You can't get away with anything else either. We have evidence of your wrongdoings, Sam. Do you think you can escape with so many witnesses? Can you just let it go? I was just tempted. The world isn't that easy. Want some tea? I don't want any. I offered him the bitter tea of life, but Sam shook his head vehemently. Then, please divorce me. No. Why? You want a divorce, right? I don't want to pay compensation. This statement made me furious. I told you, the world isn't that easy. Drink the tea. I pressed the glass to his cheek. And you need to pay back the money you used from our savings. What? How do you know about that? Who uses our joint debit card for groceries and living expenses? You. Then how could I not notice? You're right. I had been wondering when to confront Sam about his money misuse. With a baby on the way and more expenses coming, a large sum had mysteriously been withdrawn. I suspected something was wrong, but only realized it today. He was using our money on his affair. Your girlfriend is rich, right? I pretended to be rich too. Otherwise, she'd leave me. Isn't that fraud? I just wanted to marry rich and live a luxurious life. So, you earn enough. Don't you? No, I don't. How much more does he want? I'm on maternity leave now, but I'll be back to work in a year and we'll be fine. Just how luxurious a life do you want? Then Sam said something unbelievable. My income, it's gone. The company is struggling, and my salary got slashed. Sam explained that his company had offered early retirement or pay cuts. If he took early retirement, he'd get a severance package, but he'd have to find a new job. Not wanting the hassle, Sam chose to stay despite the pay cut. But the cut was worse than expected, and now the company was on the brink of bankruptcy. It'll probably go under within a year, and I'll be jobless. Then find another job. You stayed at your current company because you found changing jobs too much of a hassle. It's not my matter. I really don't know anything about that. You could have talked to me since we're married. But Maria, you were pregnant. I felt a little touched, thinking he was considerate of my pregnancy. He was venting his stress by harassing useless, pregnant Maria. If he talked to you, he couldn't have done that anymore. Take back that feeling of being touched. My feelings toward Sam had already hit rock bottom. So, my decision was made. Okay. I'm divorcing you. I'll be demanding compensation and child support. Maria, you're a demon. I don't want to hear that from you, Sam, who tried to drive me out with harassment. He went silent, his eyes brimming with tears. Finally venting my pent-up frustrations made me feel relieved. I could see Sam's parents, also with teary eyes, being scolded by relatives from the corner of my eye. After that, the divorce proceedings went smoothly. Using my savings from before marriage to hire a lawyer, the divorce was finalized surprisingly quickly. With the compensation, child support, and the return of misused shared assets, Sam's house became mine. Naturally, the remaining couple's savings also belonged to me. Having lost everything, Sam returned to his parents' house. I don't care about Maria. I have a rich girlfriend. It was shocking how unfazed he was. The ex-husband didn't quickly remarry as expected. When I contacted relatives who attended a celebration disguised as a baby shower to apologize for the trouble, they updated me on his family's situation. Actually, his new girlfriend apparently had a lot of debt. What? According to Sam's aunt, the woman pretended to be rich just like him. She had a habit of borrowing money, and it was all spent on brand-name items. The ex-husband believed her words because of the expensive brand items she wore. Sam was furious, but it was mutual. The girlfriend was also angry, and they broke up quickly. After that, the ex-husband relied on his parents without working, living at their place. Sam's parents, living on a pension, didn't have much savings even when they were working. Into their lives moved a son with a divorce history. Moreover, he was a recluse without a job. He was clearly on a downward spiral. Recently, Sam's mother asked to see her grandchild, but I denied the request since a grandparent doesn't have visitation rights. As she kept persistently contacting me, I blocked her number. I anticipated that living in Sam's house would eventually lead to a confrontation. I quickly put the house up for sale and moved into a new home with my child. Thus began my new life with just my child and me. My little one, now over a year old and walking well, finally called me Mom. My parents visit often, teaching my child to say Grandpa and Grandma. After waiting so long to have this precious child, I can't believe my ex-husband threw away something so precious for momentary desires. I know there will be tough times ahead for me too. But I can manage it, thanks to my child's radiant smile. Holding my smiling child, I truly feel happiness. I was diagnosed with stage 3 lung cancer. Just 1 year left to live. Suddenly, my everyday life was engulfed in darkness, as if it had been stolen away. The first thing that crossed my mind was whether I should tell my husband Thomas and my son Stephen about this harsh reality. I hesitated for a bit, but ultimately decided not to tell them. I didn't want them to see me getting weaker, and more than anything, knowing how challenging caregiving can be, I didn't want to put them through that. So then, what should I do? The answer to that came quickly as well. I would ask for a divorce without saying anything. Rather, no other options even came to mind. And so, without telling them anything, I began packing up my belongings. Then one day, out of the blue, "Carol, come here for a sec. We need to talk." Thomas called out to me. While I had no definite proof as to why, deep down I was almost certain. Of all things, had he noticed my illness? Across the table in the middle of the living room sat Thomas, wearing a grave expression. Sensing that the moment had finally come, my heart pounded so hard it felt like it would leap out of my mouth. "I'm only going to say this once, so listen up," Thomas began. I swallowed hard. "I don't want to be a caregiver. I saw how much pain you were in. So, I want a divorce." His unexpected words made me feel like everything was going dark before my eyes. "I understand. Then, I'll be the one to leave. Thank you for everything up until now." Brushing past Thomas, who looked like he still had more to say, I left the living room. Without even grabbing the bags I had prepared in advance, I ran out of the house. Outside, rain was pouring down. "Hey Carol, what's for dinner tonight?" My husband Thomas poked his head out from the garden to ask me this question, having just finished up his new gardening hobby. It was 3 p.m. A bit early to be thinking about the dinner menu. But then again, this was typical for him. "I haven't decided on anything yet," I replied. "Is that so?" Thomas responded. Thomas had always been selfish since he was young. His infidelity was not just a 1 or 2 time thing, and I had to handle most of the housework and childcare by myself. To top it all off, he got hooked on gambling, constantly betting on horse races and all sorts of other things, winning and losing over and over again. While he never went into debt, there were times when we came close to that kind of situation. Just dealing with that alone was incredibly tough. But then, around the time when raising Stephen started to settle down, my mother-in-law Linda had a stroke and became paralyzed on one side of her body. I was the only one taking care of Linda when she needed long-term care, but that burden was finally lifted when she passed away 2 years ago. As for Thomas, honestly, I'm not really sure what he was doing during that time. He went to work as usual, and whenever he had a little extra money, he probably went off somewhere to gamble. It's not like he never contributed any money at all. When he won at gambling, he would come home in high spirits and give me some money for cosmetics, a somewhat nice brand name watch, or living expenses. But the thing is, with gambling, you lose more often than you win. So there were times when it affected our household finances, and I would scold him when he came home after a big loss. Why do I put up with so much to be with him? Honestly, I don't know myself. After he reached retirement age, maybe he had a change of heart. He finally stopped cheating, and his gambling was reduced to just enjoying the occasional horse race. On the other hand, it was surprising that Thomas took an interest in gardening, but it's a far healthier and more wholesome hobby than gambling. Seeing that, I felt relieved deep down. And so, as we reached the second half of our lives, we were finally blessed with some peaceful days. Then one day, sometime after that, a loud yell suddenly rang out, shattering our tranquil daily life. "Oh, Carol! I hit it big!" The red ballpoint pen Thomas was holding clattered to the ground. "What? What happened?" His voice was so loud that I ended up yelling back. I got a $1,000 payout on the trifecta. Apparently, he had hit a huge jackpot. Certainly, his biggest wins until now had been around $300. But this time, it was a high-stakes payout of $1,000. Thomas was overjoyed like a child. I know, Carol. Let's go on a trip with this money. Huh? A few days later, as we were discussing it, he came home with a large sum of money in hand. It's not a very reassuring amount for retirement savings, but it's certainly not a small sum either. When was the last time we went on a trip, I wonder? When should we go? And where do you want to go anyway? Seeing him so uncharacteristically enthusiastic, I think back to how we used to be. It wasn't all good times, but they're still fond memories. When I really think about it, it's quite strange that I've stayed with Thomas this long. But even so, he's still undoubtedly my husband. There must be some kind of charm about him that I can't quite put into words. Anywhere is fine. I don't have any particular plans anyway. All right then, I'll decide for us. Saying that, he skillfully started operating his smartphone. I still haven't gotten used to it no matter how much time passes, and I can only use the bare minimum functions. But he has mastered it. Hey, how about we go overseas for a change? At our age, that's a bit much. I see. Then let's keep it domestic. It doesn't quite feel like him, but I don't have a bad feeling about it. The thought of being able to spend our time leisurely and peacefully like this from now on makes me a little happy. Since we have the opportunity, it might be good for us to talk about our future life together while on the trip. He's calmed down a bit too, so he probably won't suggest anything crazy. 1 week before the trip. While getting ready, I suddenly felt something off with my body. In that instant, an intense pain assaults me simultaneously from my abdomen and the opposite side of my back, as if being crushed. Almost at the same time, a black darkness rushes in from the edges of my vision. Before long, it filled into the center. When I open my eyes, I see the face of my son Stephen. Huh, Stephen? What are you doing here? What do you mean? What am I doing? Mom, you collapsed. According to him, I had apparently lost consciousness in the bedroom and was immediately carried to the hospital. Come to think of it, he had said he was coming home today. The thought of what might have happened if he hadn't been there is terrifying. It's noisy all around, with several nurses bustling about in addition to Stephen. It seems to be a grave situation of some kind. Is it my fault that things are in such a flurry? I ponder with my muddled mind. The answer is extremely hazy and doesn't come to me properly. Somehow managing to finish gathering my thoughts, a dull pain ran through my abdomen as if I had just remembered it. Unable to bear it, I press on my stomach. What's wrong? Are you okay? I'm fine. It just hurt a little. I try to put on a brave face so as not to worry Stephen, but pain is pain. If I do end up being diagnosed with something because of this, I want to keep it from Stephen. And of course, from Thomas too. I don't want to cause them any unnecessary worry because of me. I don't want to show them my weakening self either. Having them take care of me after how challenging it was is out of the question. With that single-minded determination, I somehow managed to stay conscious. After that, I underwent several examinations and was admitted to the hospital that day. I told him I was fine and sent him home to pack some things for me. I also left a message for Thomas, telling him to let him know it was just for testing and hospitalization. All I could do after that was pray that nothing was wrong. That night, a middle-aged male doctor in a white coat walked over to me and quietly sat down. Seeing his face, I instinctively sensed it was bad news. His expression was that gravely serious. Miss Smith, please listen calmly. That's the usual line, I thought to myself. My intuition turns into certainty. Okay. We found cancer. It's stage 3 pancreatic cancer. Removal of the cancer is impossible. This must be what they mean when they say everything went dark before their eyes. It must have gone dark like this right before I actually lost consciousness too, but it's completely different from this darkness now. The despair was on a whole other level. I see. Cancer. All the various noises that had been busily ringing until then were cut off, and I could barely make out the doctor's words. The reason for all the commotion seemed to lie with me after all. You have 1 year left to live. And then the crushing final blow, the pronouncement of my remaining lifespan. Amidst the silence of the surrounding sounds, the only thing I could hear clearly was the sound of something crumbling inside me. Collapsing like a tower of building blocks. 1 year. It wasn't much to begin with, but all our plans for retirement have been ruined. No, in fact, retirement itself has vanished. I can only imagine how you must feel. What exactly can he imagine, I wonder? Amidst the swirling questions and confusion, my unwarranted anger is directed at the doctor. You could be admitted to the hospital right away, but I'm sure you have various things to take care of. Let's suppress the progression with medication for a while. After that, we can consider treatment options. But for now, I understand. That's all I could say in response. Later, Thomas and Stephen came to visit me at slightly different times. Hey, Carol! You all right? I'm fine. I just fell and got a little injured. You're making too big a deal out of it. I said that, but Stephen's gaze, knowing that it was different from the truth, was painful. After returning home once, a sigh escapes in front of the suitcase that was in the middle of being packed. The first thing that comes to mind is whether I should tell them about this reality. I agonized over it a little, but in the end, I chose not to tell them. In that case, what should I do? The answer to this also came to me immediately. Ask for a divorce without saying anything. Rather, this was the only thing I could think of. Once I've made up my mind, the packing that was left half-finished won't go to waste. And so, I decided to start sorting out my belongings without telling the two of them anything. Since the trip was postponed, most of the luggage is still as it was. Thomas was disappointed at first, but considering the circumstances, he kept it from showing on his face. Then one day, as I was switching to packing to secretly leave and working on it, Thomas appeared in the bedroom. Carol, come here for a bit. We need to talk. A sudden summons. While I have no definite proof as to the reason, deep down I have something close to certainty. Of all things, has he noticed my illness? Across the table in the center of the living room sat Thomas with a grave expression. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like it would leap out of my mouth at any moment. I'm only going to say this once, clearly. I swallowed hard. I don't want to be a caregiver. I saw how much pain you were in. So, I want a divorce. His unexpected words made me feel like everything was going dark before my eyes. Could it be that he heard it from Stephen? Or, I don't know how, but he saw through my illness and brought up divorce with caregiving as the reason, and I couldn't hide my agitation. I knew he had always been selfish, but I never thought it would be to this extent. At the same time, I realized that the decision I had made was not a mistake. Yes, that had been my intention from the beginning. In a sense, I even felt a sense of refreshment. I understand. Then I'll be the one to leave. Thank you for everything up until now. Brushing past Thomas, who looked like he still had more to say, I left the living room and ran out of the house. Outside, rain was pouring down. I had boldly run out, But after calming down a bit and thinking about it, I have nowhere to go. I left behind even the suitcase I should have prepared, and all I have with me is a smartphone that I can barely use properly. I even left my wallet behind. To make matters worse, the rain that was light when I came out has now turned into a downpour. I watched it from under the wisteria vines in the park. Well, what should I do? Going back now would be utterly disgraceful, but for example, to stay at a hotel or to be hospitalized as is, I absolutely need my wallet. Rarely getting so worked up, I was disappointed in myself for forgetting even such obvious things before running out. If I were to have another episode here. A park in the middle of the day on a weekday. Normally, children and their parents would be having fun, but in this heavy rain, the only thing lively is the sound of the rain, not the voices of children. Hardly anyone would pass by. My anxiety grows and swells against my will. To top it off, the roof is wisteria vines. Naturally full of gaps, the leaking is terrible. Dripping from the top of my head, my whole body gradually grows cold from the flowing droplets. It will surely have a negative impact on my illness too. But there's nothing I can do. The rain is still strong, and there's no sign of it letting up at all. I waited for a while without thinking about anything, but there are no passers-by. It seems my only option is to go back once after all. Just as I thought that, I was struck by another terrible stomach pain. Without a doubt, it's the same pain as before. My apprehension was not unfounded. I might lose consciousness again. No, if that's all that happens, it would still be better. I somehow reached for my smartphone, and that's when it happened.
There you are! Mom, what are you doing? In a place like this?
Amidst the heavy rain, Stephen's voice coming from afar kept me tethered to consciousness. Once again, I was saved by him.
I thought you'd left right away, but you don't even have an umbrella. I mean, listen properly to what Dad has to say, will you? Don't tell me you're feeling sick again. Wait there. I'll call an ambulance now.
When we arrived at the hospital, I was admitted immediately. It may be odd for me to say it myself, but it's only natural. And then, Thomas came to visit my hospital room, belatedly. I wondered if he hadn't wanted to nurse or care for me, but I remembered that Stephen had told me to listen properly to him at the park, so I stayed silent. Then, out of his mouth came words that were unexpected once again.
Why did you keep quiet about it until now? Since when?
Not understanding what he was saying, I inadvertently opened my mouth.
You don't want to nurse or care for me, right? If you're divorcing me, why did you come? Huh? I never said anything like that.
I suppressed the urge to get worked up. This isn't home, it's the hospital. I mustn't cause trouble for the other patients.
No, you did say it. That you don't want to be a caregiver. It's convenient for me too, since I never intended to make you do it anyway. Why are you saying now that I won't take care of Carol? What incomprehensible things have you been saying? I don't want you to bother taking care of me, so please go home. That's why I'm asking, why did you keep quiet about that?
Both Thomas and I end up getting agitated. Even knowing it will cause trouble, I can't help but raise my voice. Even so, our conversation just isn't meshing at all. What is Thomas trying to say, I wonder? Then, as if unable to stand watching any longer, Stephen interjected.
Wait a minute. Listen, okay? Take turns saying what each of you is hiding. I'm not saying anything precisely because I know both sides. Have a proper talk, right here and now.
In the end, even he is saying strange things as well. With that, he left the room. I had no idea what was going on, but for now, I explained my current condition, lying in a hospital bed. honestly and calmly, no matter what. Stage 3 pancreatic cancer, huh? I see.
What are you hiding?
Well, I was told I have lung cancer too. 6 more months, 10 months at most, they said. I couldn't believe it. If that's the case, what was the true meaning behind those words from a few hours ago?
Carol, you took care of my mother, didn't you? I couldn't do anything for you. That's why I didn't want to burden you anymore because of me. So, I said I didn't want to make you be a caregiver. I didn't know that even you had gotten cancer.
Hearing his confession, my emotions were in turmoil, but the first thing I thought was that his lack of communication was unbelievable. If he had properly explained the situation, we wouldn't have been having this conversation in the hospital room, at least.
Then you should say that more clearly. I'm sorry. I didn't want to tie you down at this age, Carol. That's why I was planning to go on one last trip and tell you everything then. I thought rather than having you take care of me, I wanted you to do more of what you like.
He pauses for a moment before continuing.
But to think that even you would get cancer. What are the chances of that?
In the end, we had been thinking the same thing. We had both hidden our illnesses and were just trying to gain the satisfaction of our own selfish self-sacrifice. I feel like I understand now why we were drawn to each other. I was thinking the exact same thing. I'm sorry for keeping quiet. No, I'm the one who should apologize. I'm sorry for always causing you trouble. If it's all right with you, Carol, would you stay with me for just a little longer? I know I'm saying something selfish. But if we both have short lifespans, I want us to do what we want to do, together. In this situation, I couldn't find any particular reason to refuse. More than anything, I couldn't help but feel that this exchange was ridiculous, and I couldn't help but laugh.
What? I'm being serious here.
I know. That's exactly why it's funny, isn't it? To think we were both trying to do the same thing. Going overseas is definitely impossible, though.
I know. That was a joke. After all, at that time, I had already been given my terminal diagnosis.
Even though he had coincidentally won big on horse racing, it seems he had suggested going on a trip at that timing because he was thinking ahead after all. It made sense that it was unlike Thomas. From that rainy day onward, we each decided to receive palliative care, and while going to the hospital repeatedly, we continued living at home as we had been. The episodes aren't completely suppressed, but they're quite stable. And right now, we were in the middle of selecting a travel destination once again.
This city, or somewhere close to here, right?
While Thomas agonized beside me, I was looking for a hospice, not a travel destination. We had agreed that we both didn't want Stephen to have to take care of us, and decided to enter a hospice together. Once we return from the trip, we'll be admitted to the hospice together. A final trip, 1 night and 2 days. Visiting tourist spots and eating at delicious-looking restaurants, we talked about each other.
When I was young, I really caused you nothing but trouble. I'm sorry.
Not just when you were young. Even just recently, I almost caught a cold because of your lack of communication.
I'm sorry. And if we're talking about that, we're both guilty, aren't we? Trying to leave without a word.
I knew how hard caregiving is, so I didn't want to make you do it.
That's why I said we're both guilty. I didn't want to make you do that kind of thing twice either. But thanks to Stephen, we were able to talk and move things in a good direction.
Inevitably, the conversation gets more lively about the recent big events rather than the past. He had always been unfaithful, had a terrible gambling addiction, and was selfish. And when he suddenly brought up divorce that time, I thought his self-centeredness had finally reached its peak. However, our stories didn't match up, and we ended up troubling our son. If we don't reflect on this, what are we even reflecting on? I don't know about everything up until now, but at least at that time, he was thinking of me, even if he was lacking in his words. Just that made me a little happy after all. So, I wanted to go on one last trip with you, Carol, but is there anything you want to do? Thomas asked while eating his meal. He doesn't look at all like a terminal cancer patient. That aside, I seriously considered his question. Horse racing.
Huh? I want to try horse racing.
1 week before entering the hospice, we went to a nearby racetrack. Unless something major happens, this will likely be our truly final outing together. Are you really going to bet?
Yeah. I'm serious.
That being said, I wasn't particularly concerned about winning or losing. I simply wanted to experience gambling purely. On the other hand, I also wanted to know the reason why Thomas found it so interesting that he got hooked even when he lost. Are you going to pick the horses yourself? Thomas had his usual serious style, with a red ballpoint pen tucked behind his ear and a folded racing newspaper. Of course, he probably intends to win this time too.
Of course. If I pick a horse with a name I like, beginner's luck will make me win, right?
It's a commonly heard superstition. Then pick as you like. It wouldn't be interesting to bet a small amount at this point, so I chose a trifecta. I guess we might be similar in some ways, after all. The fanfare resounded, and the venue was greatly excited. Just being able to feel this excitement on my skin made me feel like it was worth coming.
No way! You've got to be kidding me!
The numbers and their order being announced sound familiar.
Let me see that for a sec.
I didn't even need to know the results anymore.
You actually won!
The payout was an unbelievable $2,000. Double the highest payout amount Thomas had ever won. And so, we enjoyed our brief remaining time and finally moved into the hospice. It's a nice place with attentive care and facilities. A much cleaner place than I had imagined, and I really took a liking to it. If Stephen hadn't come to pick me up on that rainy day, we probably would have passed each other by and wouldn't have been able to come here. In my case, I might not have even been alive in the first place. And now, I get to be with the person I love most, with whom I've shared joys and sorrows for decades. We were able to make our final memories too. It was the best possible end of life. This is a nice place. I still can't relax, but I guess I'll get used to it eventually. Thomas mutters to himself. Because I'm in the same position, I can understand the emotions packed into those words. How much longer will we be able to live, I wonder? I felt the exact same way. It's not hard to imagine that if we couldn't be together, we would have been crushed by anxiety. But now, that wasn't the case. If I believe the doctor's words, he will likely be the first to face his final moments. But that doesn't mean I can let my guard down. I don't even need to think about what would happen if I left him alone. I have to live with all my might so that I don't end up leaving him behind, unreliable as he is. Thomas's self-centeredness is probably more incurable than cancer, so he'll surely be the one to leave me behind. I'd prefer if he could live longer than me, but even so, I don't mind. I'm used to his selfishness, after all. And then, that morning arrived. From the day he was given 10 months to live, Thomas fought and endured cancer for a whole year. Unlike that day, the sky is so clear it feels refreshing. With this weather, he surely won't get lost on his way to his destination. Carol, I'm sorry for always causing you trouble. Lying in the hospital bed, Thomas had become thin and frail over the past year. Honestly, it was a sight I could hardly bear to see. What are you saying at this point? We already finished talking about that, didn't we? I see. Thank you.
No, I really thank you. When I try to hold back my tears, my chest starts to hurt instead. When I realize that this is truly goodbye, I'm overwhelmed by a surge of emotions. But I'll be joining him soon too. Thinking that, my chest feels a little lighter. Because we'll surely meet again soon. Dad, you did well. Rest in peace. Good night. I'll be joining you soon too, okay? As Stephen and I, along with the doctors and caregivers, watched over him, the starting fanfare resounded.